Good afternoon and welcome to FCI's webinar series. I'm Samira Salem, the Director for Social Innovation and Community Development, and we're so delighted to have you with us today. With the help of BMO Harris, we're able to offer this series of webinars. We want to express our gratitude to BMO Harris for being an active partner in Wisconsin communities. As always, we welcome your questions and comments throughout, so please feel free to type your questions or comments into the chat box on your screen and submit them to us throughout the webinar. Please feel free to share on Twitter anything that you've learned throughout. Your aha moments are very welcome. In addition, we're recording this webinar and we'll make a link available afterwards, just in case you'd like to share it with any of your colleagues. So we're pleased to welcome Carousel Bayrd, who will be who will be talking about how to do advocacy at the state and local levels. There's been a lot of talk lately about advocacy, especially in the nonprofit world. We thought it would be valuable to bring someone in who's an expert when it comes to advocacy to help us think about the basics of what it is, who can do it, how we can effectively advocate for issues of importance to our organization and to our constituency. So I want to thank Carousel for sharing her expertise with us. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Carousel. Just go ahead and get us going.
All right. Thank you so much. That was I'm honored to be an expert on this. I'm really excited to be working with everyone today. So my name is Carousel Bayrd. I'm a partner with Herrick and Kasdorf. I do advocacy and policy work with them for organizations, for nonprofits. I'm a licensed lobbyist with the state. I'm also the policy and partnership coordinator with YWCA Madison. That is a job that I've been doing for the last 2 years, and we're phasing it out. By April, they'll be one of my clients that I take with me to Herrick and Kasdorf, but it's really been a fabulous learning experience at the YWCA. We started with nothing. I was their first ever policy and partnership coordinator and really developing our policy work from the ground up. I'm excited to share the things that we have learned and been a part of. I'm also an elected official. I'm on my 12th year on the Dane County Board, so I'm excited to bring that perspective as well. I'm going the wrong way. I want to remind everyone, first of all, I would love, I'm all set with being interrupted at any time. If you have any questions or any thoughts, please send them in to us and we will try and address them as best as we can. I want to review big picture what we're going to try and cover today. Really two parts to the conversation today. First is how to get started as an organization. What is political advocacy? Who can advocate? Why do you even want to do this? And how do you decide what to do? And that's sort of the big picture goal of how, as an organization, you wrap your mind around what is advocacy work and what difference can we make in our community. And then sort of the second half, today we're going to talk about how to advocate. Local level versus state level, what's the difference? Why you would choose one over the other, how you can successfully do both, and how can you be successful, who can help you succeed and do the best that you can do. So I'm going to ask you a couple questions in just a moment, but I wanted to do this one slide first, which is, what is advocacy? In general, it's adding your voice to the legislative process. And, you know, legislative process isn't just legislation, it's policy, it's options, it's all the different things that happen. It's the process itself of how does legislation become law, what do elected officials and government entities do. And it's expressing your support or opposition, but it can be much more nuanced than that as well. Also saying, you know, we need a change and here's why, and expressing all the different things that you do. I like to give the example, I've been on the county board for more than a decade now, and people ask me all the time, what's, you know, your proudest moment, a piece of legislation you're most proud of? And I must say that one of the things I'm most proud of wasn't legislation at all. It was a conversation that we had in a room when we were talking about victims of crime, and we had a conversation of how to change our policy so that rape kits were protected and stored a better way than they were before. Now, there's merit, of course, to writing a law, to saying when you have a rape kit, you need to do this, because that codifies it and makes it a public conversation. But the fact that we worked out this policy agreement in this public meeting with victim advocates and victim rights group and the district attorney in the room, it really was an amazing moment where I was reminded how important it is to be part of the legislative process, not just the legislation. So I want to make sure you realize that advocacy is much broader than just supporting a law or not supporting a law, which of course is important too. And that there's also so many ways to advocate. It can be loud and bold. You can have a press conference. You can have a rally. You don't even have to contact an elected official or elected leader. Of course, you can contact your elected leaders. You can testify at a hearing. You can write letters and do things like that. But there's also some more subtle things that you can do, and it's good to be reminded the varieties. Sometimes just writing a letter to the editor, not even, again, contacting your elected officials. Sometimes it's sending out an email to your colleagues that you work with saying, we want to make sure you all know this bill is happening. Will you tell others about it? There's so many just different ways to get involved. So here's our first poll question. Now that we've wrapped our head around the comprehensiveness of what advocacy can be, wanted to know a little bit about the people joining us today so that I have an understanding and can help shape the conversation where it goes from here. Do you currently do advocacy work? So 1, yes, we have an advocacy policy employee who is a registered lobbyist. 2, yes, this is part of the workload of a full-time or part-time employee. 3, yes, but it's not on anyone's assigned job duty, done if we get to it. Like perhaps when I started at the YWCA, there was an advocacy committee that was made up of other staff members, and they met once a month to sort of talk about things, and sometimes work would get done, and sometimes it wouldn't because people were busy doing their other full-time job. Number 4, isn't that what our CEO, director, president is supposed to do? Or 5, no. So take a moment now to just let us know where you are in this group. I think we've waited long enough. 67% of you voted 75. The number's shooting up. It looks like the highest number is yes, number 3, but it's not anyone's assigned job duty. That's 56% of you are saying that. 17% of you are saying yes, this is part of the workload. Number 2, part of the workload of a full-time or part-time employee. And that's the lowest. 28% said no, number 5. So 56% is number 3, 28% is no, 17% yes, number 2, the responsibility, part of someone's workload. Good to know. Okay. And one more poll question. What type of organization are you? For-profit, nonprofit, governmental, or a mix? I feel like we should be playing the Jeopardy music right now. Do, 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 do. All right. It looks like most of you have voted. 57% say nonprofit, 29% say a mix, 14% say governmental. Great. So the first one I want to remind you all, and perhaps all of you know this or you wouldn't have joined us today, but this is the biggest misnomer and hesitation that stops people from becoming the advocates that they can be. Who can advocate? You can, is the answer. The federal free speech law is pretty broad. In general, it is not a violation for nonprofits, for organizations, for individuals to have a position on an issue, to have an opinion on an issue. You can at any time say people should vote yes or no on this legislation. You at any time can say, ask your senator, ask your mayor, ask your state representative to vote in yes for this, to vote against something, ask if they support this. You can always ask that question. So what you can't specifically do is say, we as X organization endorse Governor Scott Walker. You cannot endorse a specific candidate. You can say, we support the policies that Governor Walker have put forth. Please email him and let him know you think he's doing a great job. You can do that. But you cannot say, we endorse Scott Walker. And this has gotten really tricky. And really, people are very casual with their wording, and it has all been acceptable by the federal government. I have seen things that say, when they're talking about Act 10, they would say, ask Governor Walker why teachers should go hungry. Right? Clearly, they're saying a not-so-friendly statement there. They're clearly leading you in a way to make you think you're not a friend of Governor Walker, but they don't say anything about him. They say, ask Governor Walker why he thinks teachers should go hungry. I've also seen one that says, ask President Obama why he doesn't like the Constitution. This is from Second Amendment folks. There was a policy recently. They weren't saying vote for President Obama. They weren't saying don't vote for President Obama. They were clearly insinuating that by saying, ask President Obama why he doesn't like the Constitution. That is legal. So if those things can happen, if you can ask Obama why he doesn't like the Constitution and ask Governor Walker why teachers should go hungry, then whatever it is you think you want to do, you can do it too. So the question is, why now do you want to do it? Hopefully everyone on board is already here knowing that you want to do this, but it's really the biggest thing is to advance your organization's mission, especially with a lot of nonprofits. A majority of nonprofits in Madison and Dane County and throughout Wisconsin are direct action services. So you are busy providing amazing services for your clients, helping them in whatever situations they need help in, a mission that you truly believe in. The truth is, if you want to make a bigger change, upstream changes to the work that you're doing, legislation and advocacy makes the bigger change. And instead of you helping individuals that are struggling, this is how you change the law so perhaps they weren't struggling in the first place. That's probably pretty common sense. You make more permanent changes, legislation lasts longer. Not only does it last longer, but you know when changes happen. So for example, my example earlier where I was talking about the policy change and now Dane County government helps store rape kits. Because this isn't a law, if the Dane County Sheriff changed his policy and said, you know what, we don't have enough funding for that, we don't have enough room in our freezer for that, we're not doing that anymore, I would have no idea. When you have legislation, it is a concrete rule that not only is there, but you can be alerted when there's a change to it, when there's an amendment to it, when someone wants to work around it. So not only does it make the change permanent, but it makes it more certain that you're aware when changes to it happen. Educate government and elected officials. We're going to get that to the very next slide. That really is the biggest reason why we need you. I will put my elected official hat on and say this is why elected leaders need you. And then the last is to empower your community, supporters, staff. You know, you look at, it allows organizations to let the community know the work that they're doing. You have a role to change your profile, to educate people about the work that you're doing at the YWCA. We got really involved with hate crime legislation, and a lot of people know that at the YWCA we do racial justice work. But we also do a lot of homeless work and are the largest, the largest shelter for women and families in Dane County. And people don't know that. And yet, when we got involved on legislation regarding homelessness and poverty, it was sort of this aha moment for our community, for organizations, for elected leaders to be reminded, oh, the YWCA does work on that. So it's just a great way to make sure everyone knows the things that you are working on. So what will you advocate on? I love this quote, you can do anything, but not everything. And I did steal this from my colleague at the YWCA. I do not take credit for finding this quote, but it's exactly right. The idea is that you need to have a level of expertise, and you do have a level of expertise. Whatever it is you do, other people don't know the ins and outs, and elected officials need you. We actually need you. There's a reason that lobbyists exist, right? Take off your cynical hat for the moment and imagine the benefit of lobbyists so that they can go in and say, hi, elected official that has 90 things to work on and is an expert in your one field. We want to tell you about this area. And I can speak from experience as a member of the county board again that I know criminal justice work, but the county board does a lot of things where sure, environmental issues, people will come to me and, my general statement is environment, good. Yes, I'm probably going to vote for this. I like trees, I like water, but do I know the ins and outs and the intricacies? Absolutely not. And that was one of the benefits I've gotten working with FCI is that, yes, of course I want access to housing. Yes, of course I want access to community jobs and community businesses. But I have no idea of the details that FCI does and the intricacies. And they have this level of expertise that nobody else has. And elected officials need to learn about what you're doing. One more example I'll give is at the YWCA, we run a program called the Driver's License Recovery Program that helps individuals that have lost their driver's license get a driver's license. And this is a pretty narrow level of expertise, but there have been a handful of bills at the state legislature that talk about revoking driver's licenses and the process to change driver's licenses and to get your driver's license back after it's been revoked. And we've actually had a difference, the YWCA, by getting involved with these particular bills because there aren't a lot of experts on it. And our testimony has made a difference when we go in and say, this is good, but let me tell you about our clients, and you think you're writing a law that's going to be helpful, but this isn't going to help them. Can you amend this? And we've been able to get these little changes that make a huge difference because we have a level of expertise working on a daily basis with our clients. So that's what you have, and we need you to bring that so that our laws and policies can be successful. Keep hitting the wrong direction. Okay, so developing your advocacy agenda. Easy start is, what is your mission? What is your organization trying to do? And this, your advocacy agenda can take a lot of time to develop. You can probably sit down and write it in an hour if you wanted to. But there really is a nice detailed process that you can follow, which is meet with the members of your team and ask them if you could change a law, what would it be? If there's a policy that would make a difference in your client's work, what would it be? And, one of the things that I love is that when we did that with our organization, the huge change that it had, we talked with the people that worked in homelessness and homeless rights, and sick leave came up so much more than I thought. And of course, we think about poverty and minimum wage and access to food and evictions, but sick leave came up over and over again as a change that we needed to make, and that wouldn't have come out if we didn't directly ask this question to our department heads and to our clients that we directly serve. Also, when we talked about with our jobs team, the number one thing came up that I didn't expect to come up was mass transit. Everyone talked about, I finally get a job, I finally get the training, I know how to do it, I know how to apply myself, and then I can't get to the job. Or they cut the service and all of a sudden it's not available from where I live. Or I was looking, finally I found an apartment that I can afford, but there's no bus service from there, and now I have to either decide to turn down the job or turn down the apartment. And all these complexities that you never even realized were really your mission, besides the YWCA's mission of ending homelessness, addressing racial disparities, empowering women. This got us to the nitty-gritty. A focus of ours is going to be addressing mass transit, and we got this when we had the detailed conversations. And I want to sort of remind you, right, what are the broader issues that impact your clients, ask your clients, your supporters, your board. But the last point, the result, you can have different versions. As a result of these detailed conversations, you can have a 20-page advocacy agenda that is yours internally that you can mess around with and look at, and then you put together the one-pager that you send out to your elected officials, that you share with the public, that you share with the board, that you can pull apart. So the benefit of having this strong, detailed conversation is that you really have a broad knowledge of all the goals and missions and hopes of your organization, and you realize there's a lot more advocacy on issues than you thought. And so I want to remind everyone of that. Like, of course, there can be working documents and different documents. What you put together doesn't have to be the version you send to the world. Working with partners. So this is sort of my question to you, and maybe your homework if you want to write that down, is what is your focus as an organization, but what coalitions are you currently with? So what's great about working with partners is that, of course, when you talk with your organization about the issues that matter to you, you're going to hear other issues as well. The YWCA cares about gun control. We care about LGBTQ rights. We care about immigration issues. Are we experts on that? No. Should we be leading on that? No. Because there's danger when you lead on an issue that you are not an expert on. Because you mean well and you could bring voices to the table, but you may be advocating for something that the insiders on that issue that have been working so hard on it are going to say, oh, don't ask for this. We know this legislator hates it when you say that word. That word will drive him crazy. Don't frame it like that. Frame it a different way. And the benefit of working with partners is that you can be a leader on issues that are broader than your specific narrow mission that fit within your philosophy and goal, and yet you don't have to be the lead speaker on that. Right now, there's a bill at the state legislature. There's a public hearing today on gun control that's happening right now. The YWCA officially registered in opposition to the bill because the bill is actually allowing access to more guns, and the YWCA's policy position is for more gun control. But we are not there at the Capitol today. We are not testifying. We did not write a position paper. What we did, though, was link to the position papers of organizations that we support, that we say we stand behind them and we know they are leading. You don't always agree 100%, but I think that makes a really huge difference to be able to rely on these partners. Then the benefit, of course, is that these other organizations, they will be there to support you. They will stand with you when you have a press conference, just like you stand with them. You also provide so much respect and appreciation from organization to organization. We're always competing with each other. It's really not so helpful, as I'm sure you all know, especially in the nonprofit and mixed nonprofit world, that there's just too many organizations, and sometimes we're all pushing each other over to compete for funds, compete for programming, compete for headlines in the paper. And when you have a press release and a statement that says, we support this issue and we ask you to go to the Voces de la Frontera website to look at their leadership on immigration issues, then not only did you give legitimacy to yourself, you gave legitimacy to this other organization. You've developed this relationship that will then, when the YWCA takes a position specifically on issues that impact people experiencing homelessness and eviction and tenancy issues, Voces de la Frontera can stand with us and say, we care about these issues, they impact our clients. And you just get bigger and stronger. And my favorite part is you educate and empower your clients and supporters so that they know of all the intersectionality of all these issues and how they impact each other. I want to remind anyone, if you have any questions or if anything that I'm saying makes you think of anything, please feel free to let us know. So what kind of advocacy is there? There's proactive versus reactive. This is pretty much common sense. You know, reactive, you're supporting a bill, ensuring that it passes, or you're opposing a bad bill, you're trying to stop it from passing. This happens a lot at the state legislature. It can be overwhelming when you just go, whoa, all I want to do is just make this bill go away. The problem with that, of course, is that sometimes you're too late. By the time a bill gets introduced, it's because it's been worked on forever and there's already political support for it. It's also this is when you don't get to give your expertise. A lot of people write bills that you'll support and you'll say, this is a great bill. If only you had this one more section. You don't realize how this one policy makes a huge obstacle that creates all these challenges for our clients. And the legislator will go, no, I had no idea that would happen, but I've already worked with everybody to get enough support for this bill. We're not going to be able to amend it at this time. So the problem sometimes with being reactive and not being in on the game when it's being drafted is that you really are supported entirely or oppose it entirely. And there isn't a lot of room for as much nuance and details as you want. The great part about proactive is that you help create the legislation. Obviously, if a legislator knows that you're a leader in the community that is an expert on financial support, like forward community investments, and you know that, wow, I want to figure out how to get more funding to low-income communities, you want to meet with forward community investments to help draft the legislation with them. This, of course, takes time. This takes a little bit of money to pay the salary. It takes initiative. It takes research, but it is the best use of your expertise. So that's the first half, the sort of heavier half of all the why. I hope I've convinced anyone that needed convincing that you absolutely want to do this fabulous stuff. Are there any questions? Do we have any questions yet?
I don't see anything coming through yet, but I do have one question for you, and maybe you're going to touch on it, but it has to do with resources. And you kind of started the conversation talking about, you know, when you did the polling, about the various levels of resources that organizations might have dedicated to this. And if you're one of those organizations like the YWCA before you joined them, where they didn't have somebody who dedicated staff to work on advocacy, but they have maybe a group of people who are interested in maybe looking at it from different perspectives, how do you make that work?
I think that the working with coalitions is one of the best ways to do that. Other people are doing homework. Other people are doing this work. Other people are experts in their tiny little world. Even if you don't have anybody on staff that thinks about this, you're going to hear through the grapevine, because we all are on way too many listservs and all of those things. You're going to hear, oh my God, this legislation was just forwarded. You know, there's a lot of, for example, LGBTQ organizations that are here in Dane County and Wisconsin, and some of them are very, very small. And legislation was just introduced that would have a positive impact on the LGBTQ community, and everybody in the LGBTQ community knew about this legislation. People were telling me, have you seen it yet? And I'm like, wait, it's not even public yet. I haven't seen this. Well, they all knew about it because it was on all their listservs and all their groups, and I wasn't in the know because that's not, you know, an issue that I'm on top of. But the benefit of being in a coalition was that's how I heard about it, and that's how I knew that all these groups knew that something was coming soon. And that's a huge way to address it. There are ways, the website for the state, it's not as complicated as it used to be. It doesn't give you everything you want, but if you gave yourself an hour, you could read through all the bills that have been introduced. If you gave yourself 15 minutes, you could read the summary statement of all the bills that were introduced and figure out 5 bills that you really want to follow. So that's a way to make a difference. Thank you. That's a great question.
No, thank you. So I guess we can move on, and just want to let people know, please feel free to use the question or the chat box throughout. We will accumulate questions and have another opportunity to ask Carousel and talk to her at the end of her presentation. Thanks.
All right, so part 2. This is when I get all gushy. I love the government. I do. I think lobbyists can do fabulous work. They can educate people. Advocacy is so important. Big picture of understanding the government, there's a structure, there's a process. Sometimes it's a done deal by the time it's introduced. Sometimes things are introduced and there can be room for lots of changes. Sometimes committee is the place to be. Sometimes the floor is the place to be. And I think the answer to all of this is you can talk with your elected official, talk with your city council member or your county board member or your state rep and say, what is the process? How do I get involved? Where is the room for the biggest change? And we'll cover that a little bit. But a good first step is, who is your organization? Based on where your organization is located, who is your city council representative? Who is your county board representative? I don't know if everybody knows that. You should try and learn that. Really easy to figure out by going to the City of Madison website if you're in Madison, but any of your city where you are, go to your county government website, the Dane County government here in Madison again, and you can look up your elected official. Don't be discouraged. There is lots of room for success. And of course, watch out for politics. Sometimes you can't win even if you're trying. but you're always making a difference. You're always adding your words, and it has an impact in the future. So again, my love of local government, I am a little biased as an elected official on the local level, but I wanted to focus on just how much easier and accessible the local government is and how much easier it is to have success. When you contact your local government, you usually contact the elected official. I have no secretary, I have no staff, I have no desk. The phone number listed on the Dane County Board for me is my cell phone, the same one my kids call. I'm answering it. It is in my pocket. If you called it right now, it would vibrate right now in my pocket. So it is easy to get a hold of me. It is easy to make sure I hear what you're saying. Elected officials on the local level, they want your input. There's a reason people run for local government. Not to say I love all my colleagues on higher levels, but local government is because you care about your park. You care about your school. You care about your neighbor. You care about the snow removal on your street. You care about all these sort of local things, and you want to hear from everyone. Again, we're usually more responsive. It's a big deal. People tell me. They see me at a restaurant, they know, not that I'm on the county board, so no one knows who I am, which is, but there's a few people that do, and they see me. And when they call me and they said, oh, I called Carousel, she did not call me back. And I can tell you, I was out of town for a week and a half when my father was sick, and 3 people called me during that week and a half, and 2 of them were like, hey, you didn't call me back. They just noticed, and they were able to track me down. One of them was talking to me at the ice cream store when I didn't call her back. You can just find us and track us down and hold us accountable. The great part about local government is the public meetings are here. They're almost always after work hours. You can fit them into your job. Clients can go, board members can go. It sometimes isn't as easy for people like us if your full-time job is the job, but it's so much easier to get board members there and other people there and to get them involved in the legislative process. And outreach really does make a difference. On legislative issues, I get maybe 10 emails on an issue. So when you email me, when you get 5 people to email me, that makes a huge difference versus on a state level, they get hundreds of contacts. The challenges, of course, with local government is scope is specific. It has a smaller reach. The challenge can sometimes be night meetings because everyone just loves going to work at 8 p.m., don't you? You've worked all day and now you get to go to an 8 p.m. meeting. That's the highlight of your day, I'm sure. And we just don't have as much resources. Don't have a staff as much that can research things. This is actually where your expertise can make a huge difference, where you can come to me and say, Carousel, we know you care about the environment. Can you help us with high capacity wells? This actually happened. A constituent was very worried about high capacity wells. And I said, I know nothing about high capacity wells. They brought me legislation, they brought me things, and it made a huge difference. So how to advocate on the local level. Again, just sort of reiterating some of the points. You contact and speak with your elected official usually. Many times they have time to meet you for coffee. You can propose legislation, propose solutions to your problems. This is where your expertise comes into place, so makes such a big difference. Racial justice and restorative justice. Oakland, California is an expertise at that. Now, why do I know that Oakland is the leading city in the United States on restorative justice? Because my job at the YWCA. So telling that to an elected official, hey, here's a problem, we want this, and we know where to look. I'm sure all of you know communities that do what you do better. On homeless issues, Salt Lake City is leading the country on homeless issues. There's no way elected officials know that, but we do at the YWCA because that's the work that we work on. You have a level of expertise that has come up at a conference you went to, at a meeting you went to, where you are saying, God, if we could only be more like San Antonio, Texas, or more like whatever it is, and if you can bring that to the elected official on the local level, you can say, look up their legislation, why can't we be more like them? You point them in the right direction. It's so much more successful. You get credit and appreciation, and you really get to lead on it. Public meetings aren't the same. Make sure when you advocate on the local level, you know. Again, using the City of Madison, their committee meetings are not as influential as their full board meetings. So to make a huge difference in the City of Madison, yes, get involved in legislation from the start. Yes, try and draft legislation and propose legislation, but you can also make a difference the day they're about to vote on it. On the Dane County Board, we're completely different. Everything's in committee. If you came to a Dane County Board meeting, all you would hear us say is I, we just vote for it because we did all the work in our committee meetings. And so while for the City of Madison committee meetings can last an hour and the full city council meeting can go until 2 in the morning, Dane County Board is the exact opposite. So just making sure when you contact your elected official, you ask them, what's the best way to make a difference on this? That right there can make a huge difference. So many people on the county board level show up at the last minute and you say, it's just too late. All the details have already been worked out. We're not really going to postpone this or send this back to committee. Versus in city council, they send things back to committee all the time. That's how their process works. So it's just helpful to know that. And of course, that's going to vary for every community that you're in. A few people make a huge difference. This is once again, groups can make a huge difference. And this isn't just, you don't have to show up. The way to get around it's an 8 p.m. meeting, it's a 7 p.m. meeting, it's a 5:30 meeting, is an organization says, hey, Carousel, come to our group. Come meet with us. We'll meet you for coffee. Hear what the 15 of us have to say. And then all of a sudden you have this 15-person constituency emailing me, reminding me that I met with them, reminding your mayor, reminding your city council member that you are paying attention to what they're doing, that you vote for them. That makes a huge difference. And just all your options can make a difference. Again, bang for your buck. Even local newspapers have a really big difference. I do not know what is in the local paper in Middleton right now, but I can tell you the Middleton City Council does. And when you write a letter to the editor and it's in the Middleton local community paper, in the Sun Prairie community paper, those city councils and those school boards, and I would venture to say even the county elected officials and probably the state elected officials from those communities, they are reading that. And local papers are always hungry for letters to the editors, are always hungry for comments and input. It's just a great way to make a difference. On the other level is the state advocacy, much broader, issues that cover so much more than local government can. Bigger population is a bigger impact. There's more conversation, there's more news coverage, the public is talking about this, the public is thinking about this. There's a lot of reasons that you want to have a bigger bang, a bigger impact. State advocacy is the benefit. The challenge of state advocacy is it's a little more complicated. It does get political. My example of there was a 17-year-old right now in Wisconsin are considered adults. There was this fabulous bill that many had bipartisan support. Many organizations supported it, and yet still it didn't pass, and it was sort of this political quagmire that people in the know sort of saw coming and said, this just isn't going to pass because of this one person. There's a lot more room for politics in there. Doesn't happen all the time. Another challenge is that you meet with staff instead of the elected officials. Sometimes you meet with the elected official too, but the staff who are incredibly knowledgeable, incredibly passionate, and know what they're doing, but it's not the same because you don't develop that relationship with the elected official. And when the staff changes a year from now and you say, hey, remember me? I was the one supporting all of your things last year. I need your help this year. The answer is they might not remember all the details and all the work that you put forth. Of course, with state elected officials, where are you from? So the issue is a bill that you care about, you oppose, is not being introduced by anyone that represents the area that you cover. So your comments to them, although not ignored and not irrelevant at all, are not as helpful and not as received because the person that you're talking to isn't really interested in someone that cannot vote for them. That's not the truth for all of them, but that's the truth for many of them. There's the whole "you're not a real person." That's a nice little policy that they just created for some people. If you don't live in their district, they don't count you. Or if you're a lobbyist for a paid organization, they don't count you. Or if you're the CEO, so your job is to advocate for a group, they don't count you. So when they're coming up with their, oh, we had 30 people register in support of this bill, or 100 people register in support of this bill, there's a lot of times where they won't count you on the state level. Also, things move fast. Sometimes things get introduced, the public hearing is a week later, and it's just, boom, really fast. So you have to pay attention to bills that are important to you. How to successfully do this in the state government? Really, I'm going to put again and again, this is where proactive makes a difference, laying the groundwork for the future. This is the heart of proactive. If you talk with, doesn't matter which political party you're in, if you talk with the political party that is not in power right now, they are still working, they are still hearing from their elected officials, they are still, they are the elected officials. They are still hearing from their constituents. They are still drafting legislation that they dream of introducing one day. And when they become empowered, they have a stack of legislation that they will introduce. And if you aren't in that stack and you say, woo, my party, my side's finally in charge, you're going to have to wait a bit because they have their stack of things that they're working on. So just know that everybody is always working on things. Laying the groundwork and developing it is huge. Developing individual relationships, getting to know their staff, making sure they know you. Coalition power, this is huge. This is the biggest power of the coalition. Currently, Dane County is not loved by the elected leaders in charge. Now, that's quite an overstatement, but that's just, we're sort of the big city, Madison and Milwaukee, not always loved by the current leadership. But if it's not the YWCA Madison that's coming in, but it's a coalition of the YWCA Madison, Voices de la Frontera, and YWCA Wausau, and all these different groups, and the ACLU of Wisconsin, and all of us come together, and all of us bring an issue. It's not just a group of a small few 150 people that live in this neighborhood, but it's a group of 1,000 people that live throughout the state. That's how you get the difference. Use your people, get them involved. Individuals giving testimony is much more powerful than the CEO, much more powerful than your policy person, me. I get to work behind the scenes, but coming to testify or coming to write and tell a personal story, much more powerful than anything any of us that are on the payroll can ever do. And one more thing, this does take time. It does take time to pay attention to the legislation. So I think that this, going to Samira's question for my final point, I think to follow on the state, it can definitely be rewarding. There are bills that you can make a difference on no matter what side politically you're on, but you have to be able to track the bills. And I think that's where coalitions can help, or if you decide this person's going to have 1 hour a week, 3 hours a week, where what they're going to do is pay attention to what's happening at the state capitol. That's going to have a huge impact on paying attention. Of course, you can hire an outside consultant that can help piece things together, but you can also do this internally. You really can if you're just for a few hours. And if you don't have funding for that or time for that, that's when local government really is the way to turn to, because all you have to do is go out to coffee with your local city council person, and now you're on their radar, and you can remind them, hey, tell me anytime a bill comes up on this issue. And local governments, they don't talk to so many people, they can sort of keep you on their list. But if you have a little bit of time, not a lot, but just a little bit of time, state government can be within your reach as well. So any questions? No questions. Well then.
I'm not seeing any questions here. Again, we encourage you to shoot us some questions or comments that you might have. I think it was a really rich presentation, so I want to thank you, Carousel. Some of the takeaways for me is just this idea. I mean, there's a lot, but laying the groundwork. You think what you were saying, that if your party is not really holding power, that is the moment to actually get to work
Yes.
on preparing legislation for the moment they actually can run with
Yes.
it. It's
Yes.
ready to go. And I think that's such a great insight, and one that I personally would never have thought of. I would think to wait a little bit,
Well,
until.
I mean,
Yeah.
just even think about, we have a new president. So President Trump, he's not sitting around asking people what their ideas are. He has a whole list of ideas that he has been waiting to implement for the day he became president. He became president and he's implementing them. And if you didn't talk to him 3 years ago, you're not on that list. Now you might get on that list if you're someone that isn't aligned with his political views. He certainly will want to hear what you have to say eventually, but he doesn't, when there's so many things to do, and think of how broad government is, every issue is touched by laws and legislation, you're going to focus on what you've been thinking about and dreaming of doing for the last 3 years, chomping at the bit. If only I was an elected official in some level of authority, I would pass this law, I would pass minimum wage changes, I would pass Tennessee. There's so many things that are already on the list that if you're not on that list, you're not going to be addressed at the beginning.
It makes perfect sense. The other thing that struck me was even looking at local government, how city government versus, how you would approach the county, how that's different, how they function differently, and having that insight. And it might be different from county and city to county and city, and so how do you plug into that? We have you, and so now we know, if we're looking at Dane County versus the city of Madison, how to think about approaching. So is it just, like you said, going to your local elected official and asking them, how do we get something moving? Like, where do we go?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the easiest way to do it, and the truth is that local elected officials in general want to be contacted by you. They don't even know you exist. There's so many, or they know you exist, but there are so many nonprofits, there's so many organizations, there's so many issues, and it's very easy. Again, in general, local elected officials, this is not their full-time job, and it can be incredibly easy to get stuck in the day-to-day, because you have to. Because if you're on your city council, no matter where you are in Wisconsin, you are worried about trash pickup and snow removal. You have to be. And that can take up your 5 hours a week that you had allotted for the entire, all of winter. You can spend your whole mind wrapped around snow removal. That's a real issue. Pothole filling and should we compost or not? All of these details happen, and if you don't have a conversation with your elected official, they're not going to have time or even think about the work that you're doing. So that's really how the power of the local elected official is. When they hear from you, you're on their radar, they care about your issue, they can tell you the process. You can have, even better than knowing the process on a local level is drafting the legislation with them, is saying, I think we should be just like Houston, Texas. They have this law that is huge success in housing. Then all of a sudden you've pointed them in a direction, you've worked with them, you've figured out these details, and that's when you can actually make the biggest difference on a local level. That the only way to have that kind of role on a state level is to have a professional paid lobbyist.
Great. Thank you. And thank you for the insights, the inspiration. I think some real practical steps for how to move forward, how to think about where to insert ourselves as organizations in terms of thinking about our mission and what makes sense, and where our sort of area of expertise lies, and connecting with coalitions, and just a lot of really, really great, rich material. And I see actually a couple of questions coming in, so would love to just, if we've got another minute or two, go ahead and throw these at you. So we've got one who is asking, so just to clarify, anyone can advocate or lobby advocate/lobby, so long as you do not endorse.
Endorse a candidate. Yes, you can endorse an issue, but do not endorse a candidate.
Okay.
And there are, you know, I realize I forgot to make this point, but it's a really small one. But there are fees at some point on the state level if you're going to lobby on more than 4 or 5 issues. And there are specific rules. Everyone gets a free pass for the first 3 or 4 or 5. The rule seems to be changing, so I don't remember the exact number. It was a different rule last year than it is this year. But at some point you need to register as a lobbyist on the state level, which is a great thing, because then you know everyone that's actually talking on the state level and seeing if they're putting money into it or not. You know, my bills for the state level are, yes, we have this position. How much money did you spend? I'm like, $17.50, like nothing. And so it's good to know the organizations that aren't doing a lot. But everyone can lobby. Everyone can do these things. And you may have to register also on your city council. The Madison City Council, for example, just wants you to let them know if you're ever going to lobby them. And that's it. You just fill out a form. But there's no prohibitions on the topic itself.
All right. Well, again, I want to thank you for a wonderful webinar. And thank the audience for your participation, for being with us here today. I've gotten a lot of questions about when the webinar recording will be available, and we should have that out by the end of the week. Anyone who signed up for it, anyone who registered, we will send you the link, and it'll also be available up on our website. So please feel free to share with friends, with colleagues. And we also want to thank BMO Harris again for making this important learning opportunity available. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you so much.